Today on NewsWatch, another deadly weekend in Israel. Secretary of State John Kerry weighs in on the violence. Hear how he plans to intervene. Plus, GOP presidential hopefuls made their way to Texas this weekend, working to win the evangelical vote. Hear what candidates had to say at the Faith Freedom Coalition. And
what keeps you up at night?
Legacy.
We are sitting down for an exclusive interview with Bishop T.D. Jakes. Hear what he had to say about his next chapter. Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Palestinian terrorist attacks have shaken Israel once again. The ongoing wave of terror brought more stabbings and shootings this weekend. Now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is planning to meet separately with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell is on the story.
A Bedouin terrorist armed with a pistol and a knife attacked Israelis at the central bus station in the southern Israeli city of Beersheba Sunday evening. He stabbed a soldier, took his gun, and went on a shooting rampage, wounding 10 others before being shot and killed himself. The soldier died, and sadly, an Eritrean man also died when he was mistaken for a second terrorist, shot by police and then attacked by a mob. In Jerusalem, Israel began erecting a security wall between the Jewish neighborhood of Armon HaNatziv and the Arab neighborhood of Jabal Mukaber. On Saturday morning, as Israelis were going to synagogue, a 16-year-old from Jabal Mukaber tried to stab a border policeman. He was shot and killed. The attack came 4 days after 2 terrorists from there shot and stabbed to death 2 people on a bus and seriously wounded 3 others. One resident said she had witnessed both attacks in her neighborhood.
First of all, I have nothing against Arab Israelis. I have a lot of friends. I am against those that comes and try to kill me. I was unfortunately witness again of the bus attack, again in my neighborhood, again by Israeli Arabs, and that's our lives.
There were a number of other stabbing attempts and attacks on Saturday, including this one in Hebron, where the terrorist was also killed. Meanwhile, Netanyahu rejected a French proposal to put international observers on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
Israel cannot accept the French draft resolution at the United Nations Security Council. It doesn't mention Palestinian incitement, doesn't mention Palestinian terrorism, and it calls for the internationalization of the Temple Mount. Only Israel alone, is the guarantor of the holy sites on the Temple Mount.
Palestinians say they're fighting to protect the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Israel says there are no changes there. Netanyahu is planning to meet Kerry in Berlin this week. Following that meeting, Kerry will probably meet Abbas in Jordan. Reports say Netanyahu won't offer any concessions to Abbas, but will demand the Palestinians stop their incitement against Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Thousands of migrants are stranded in the Balkans as they figure out new routes to Western Europe. Hungary closed its border with Croatia Sunday to stop the free flow of migrants, forcing Croatia to reroute them through Slovenia to continue their journey west. And while Slovenia is allowing people through in small groups, authorities have deployed police and put up fences to prevent a mass entry. Thousands more migrants are stranded on the Serbian side of the border with Croatia. Vladimir Putin has been building up Russia's military presence in Syria with jets, warships, tanks, and more. He says he wants to fight ISIS. But is that really his plan, or does he have something even bigger in mind? Dale Hurd has the story.
Since the beginning of Russia's military buildup in Syria, world leaders have been wondering what Vladimir Putin is really up to. Yes, Putin wants to rescue his ally, the brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad, from losing a bloody civil war. And Russia would like to hang on to its naval facility in the Syrian port of Latakia. But is that all Putin is after? Or does he have other goals as well?
We don't truly understand yet what it is that Russia is going to do in Syria.
What experts do know is that Vladimir Putin could create a lot of trouble in the Middle East. But in the process, he could also boost the ailing Russian economy, an economy that is still in the tank from low oil prices and from Western economic sanctions over Russia's annexation of Crimea. And despite Putin's efforts to diversify the economy, it still lives or dies with energy prices.
The ruble is very sensitive to the moves of oil prices. So if oil becomes cheaper, the ruble does the same.
Putin has taken a big gamble with the public at home by going into Syria. Polls show most Russians opposed sending troops to Syria. But perhaps Putin realizes that by moving into Syria, he can protect his ally Assad and gain the side benefit of rising oil prices, thus boosting the Russian economy and his standing at home. Russia's military buildup and bombing campaign in Syria have revived the so-called security premium, a small rally in oil prices based on the fear of shortages in other parts of the world because of war in the Middle East. A big escalation in fighting could mean a big escalation in oil prices. Russia is also competing with the Saudis for energy customers, and a war in the Middle East makes Saudi supplies look less reliable. And with its new airbase in Syria, Russia could coordinate with Iran to disrupt shipments from Persian Gulf and Red Sea terminals. So by unleashing his military in Syria, Vladimir Putin could kill two birds with one stone, both saving an ally and reviving Russia's oil-based economy. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
New emails show a total disconnect between Hillary Clinton's State Department and the U.S. ambassador in Benghazi in the lead up to the terrorist attack there. That's the latest word from the chairman of the committee investigating Benghazi. 4 Americans died in the attack on September 11, 2012. Congressman Trey Dowdy told CBS's Face the Nation Ambassador Stevens was begging for more security immediately after he arrived in Libya. But instead of sending help, the State Department sent emails about PR and talking points. Stevens replied saying maybe we should ask another government to pay for our security upgrades because our government isn't willing to do it. Hillary Clinton's long-awaited public testimony on Benghazi comes this Thursday. Turning now to faith freedom and the race for the White House, a handful of GOP presidential candidates gathered near Dallas this weekend to court the crucial evangelical voting bloc. CBN's David Brody reports from Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas.
The kind of fight you want someone...
Republican presidential candidates fishing for evangelical voters found a fully stocked pond Sunday north of Dallas. Nearly 8,000 filled Prestonwood Baptist Church to hear the numerous contenders make their case on important social issues. Some, like Carly Fiorina, brought up the shocking Planned Parenthood undercover videos.
Just recently, they said that they would stop taking reimbursement for the services that the left-wing media said weren't happening. We are winning this fight.
Ben Carson talked about the importance of a Christian America.
It's time for us to bring God back to our country. And I know, it's... The president says we're not a Judeo-Christian nation, but he doesn't get to decide, we get to decide.
Jeb Bush touted his pro-life credentials.
As governor of the state of Florida, we defunded Planned Parenthood when I was governor. We banned partial birth abortion. We were the first state to have a Choose Life license plate.
Candidates shared their views ranging from supporting Israel to fighting the persecution of Christians at home and overseas. While audience members might not be ready to make their choice quite yet, most like what they heard.
I really am undecided. I have some leanings, but I think that we have some really excellent candidates, and I think we have some really good ones showing up here today.
Oh, I'm already totally committed to Marco Rubio.
I want Ted Cruz for president.
And what about frontrunner Donald Trump?
Well, he just has an it factor.
This evangelical presidential forum is actually missing a couple of main players. Donald Trump, the frontrunner, is not here. Neither is Marco Rubio, who is rising in the polls as well. It gives all of these other candidates an opportunity to actually make a good impression in front of a very important audience. One man ready to make a move is Ted Cruz. He's been slowly climbing in the polls recently and knows the importance of the evangelical vote.
I believe 2016 is going to be a religious liberty election. As these threats grow darker and darker and darker, they are waking people up here in Texas and all across this country.
In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Cruz says there's a reason he's on the rise.
I think the sharpest difference between my record and that of every other candidate in the race is that people are tired of campaign conservatives. They're tired of people who talk a great game while they're on the campaign trail, but they haven't actually walked the walk. And I think people are looking for a consistent conservative.
Others, like Mike Huckabee, are struggling to gain traction. Huckabee tells CBN News he's concentrating on winning the key state of Iowa.
So all this hype about who's up, who's down in the polls doesn't mean anything if you don't win an early state.
At this point, it's all about jockeying for position, and evangelicals, along with the rest of the nation, seem intently engaged in this fascinating horse race. David Brody, CBN News in Plano, Texas.
And CBN News will have an in-depth interview with Jeb Bush in the coming days, so be sure to follow us at cbnnews.com for the very latest. Well, ready or not, it is starting to feel a lot like winter. Several cities across the country closed out the weekend with their first snowfall of the season. And for much of the rest of the nation, cold temperatures are sticking around as the new week begins. It's only October, but already some of the coldest weather of the season has swept from the Midwest to parts of the East Coast, bringing snow to Michigan, New York, and even parts of Pennsylvania.
So my two daughters woke up at 6:30 this morning, and they were so excited. They thought that it was Christmas, and a little disappointed that they might have missed Halloween.
In Syracuse, New York, 9 inches of snow so far, cutting autumn short, burying backyards and making for dangerous road conditions.
It would be nice to have fall back, and we certainly love the first snowfall, just not this early.
Forecasters say it is not unusual for freezing temperatures to show up so early in the season. Meanwhile, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released its winter outlook, predicting one of the strongest ever El Niño weather patterns in the Pacific, which will likely influence the winter's weather. It predicts above average temperatures in the northern half of the U.S., but below average temperatures in the southern plains and the southeast. The National Weather Service says by the middle of the week, milder fall temperatures will return, putting winter on hold for at least a few more weeks. Coming up, if you thought that you could just sit back, do your job, and ignore the culture war going on around you, think again. Hear what radical liberals have in store for you. The story's coming up next. A high school football coach in Washington State is standing up for his faith by kneeling and praying. Last month, Bremerton district officials told assistant coach Joe Kennedy he was not allowed to kneel and pray after games, something he's done for years. Well, Friday, he defied their orders and prayed at the 50-yard line. It is unclear what school officials will do. Kennedy's attorney says the district has no right to ban the coach from personally praying. CBN News spoke with Coach Kennedy about the situation. You can log on to cbnnews.com to see that interview. Just do your job. That's what liberals are saying to Christian bakers, florists, and public servants. The problem is they change the rules in the middle of the game. Many religious believers are being told their conscience no longer matters. And as Paul Strand shows us, this could pose even more problems for the faithful.
One thing Kentucky Clerk Kim Davis has heard over and over during her refusal to issue gay marriage licenses is just do your job. Religious liberties lawyer Matt Bowman says that's part of a strategy by progressives to redefine jobs in order to support their agenda.
The left is not content that abortion or same-sex weddings or assisted suicide even be legal. They want to force you to help. And if you won't help, you won't be able to earn a living for your family because your job has now been redefined to include these things.
In this Federalist article, Bowman points out how the government forces many employers to cover costs for abortion-causing contraceptives. Vermont requires doctors to tell some patients they can assist them in committing suicide.
This is a serious problem because a lot of patients don't want to go to a doctor who considers it a legitimate option to kill them.
Christian clerks, bakers, and florists have paid the legal price for not doing their jobs as the politically correct deemed necessary.
These are all situations where the government is become weaponized on the movement of abortion and assisted suicide and gay marriage to force people, to coerce them, to punish them, to take away their licenses, to tell them they can't be in business, to tell them maybe even to send them to jail.
You know, there's a lot at stake here.
Davis went to jail rather than issue same-sex marriage licenses in her name because she sees it as a spiritual struggle for the soul of the nation.
This is not a war with flesh and blood. It's a war of principalities. It's a spiritual warfare.
They never were really interested in the licenses in the first place. They're interested in Kim Davis's scalp on a wall.
Davis's attorney Matt Staver points out these legal crackdowns are really about forcing submission.
Even though there's other alternatives out there, there's other bakers, there's other florists, they want the person who has the deeply held religious conviction to participate in a ceremony that celebrates something that is contrary to God's word.
Family law professor Robin Fretwell Wilson thinks religious believers who refuse to compromise will continue to lose in the courts. Meeting CBN News at the National Constitution Center, she used Davis as an example.
No person can be the choke point on the path to marriage and deny other people their rights.
What Fretwell Wilson argues is that if people of faith want their religious rights respected, those on the other side are going to have to feel their rights are respected too. She praises a compromise in Utah where Mormons and LGBT groups sat down together to advance all their rights.
That project of advancing their rights gives us an opportunity to sit down as a community and say, how can we live together in peace? How can we have more elbow room in a state that feels like it's crushing in on us?
And crushing is exactly what's happening to Washington florist Baronelle Stutzman, who said no to furnishing the flowers for a gay wedding. A legal defeat will cost her everything.
Our retirement, our home, and our business, because they're also suing us personally and corporately. So we'll possibly lose everything we own.
This is the government basically trying to bully Baronelle to set an example, to say if you don't toe this ideological line, you and your family will be coerced, you'll be punished, you'll be put out of business.
Stutzman wishes her opponents could see her stand isn't personal.
Christ said it, I didn't. So, you know, you're fighting the wrong person here.
Another reason why Staver doesn't want government to force Kim Davis out.
But it sets a precedent. If you're a Christian and you believe in marriage that people have believed in through millennia of human history that Jesus himself spoke about, then you ought to not run for office. If you're in office, you ought to resign.
And the bullying won't stop there.
We already saw what happened with the baker and the florist and the wedding photographer, and it's going to happen to churches and to Christian colleges.
Navy Chaplain Wes Motter faced a forced discharge for counseling military members about the Bible's stance on homosexuality and premarital sex.
I think comfortable Christianity is over. I think that we need to come to a point, not looking to fight, but there's going to come a moment where every believer who is a follower of Jesus Christ has to make a decision. Will you choose me or will you choose the world?
Motter's attorney calls these dangerous times for believers.
People in this country who are really paying attention and seeing that are going to be outraged and shocked when they learn that this is coming to their door too. It's not just in the big cities or in the on the East Coast or the West Coast.
Fretwell Wilson has a warning.
Religious people and religious groups have to be observant right now. They have to be cognizant of the things that are changing in our lives.
What we're seeing happen to Baronelle could happen to a lot of other people if we continue to allow this trajectory to continue.
What many people of faith are realizing is this is a whole new era, uncharted territory, and many things that they took for granted and rights that they felt were guaranteed are way up in the air. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the National Constitution Center, Philadelphia.
Up next, one-on-one with Bishop T.D. Jakes. Hear what keeps him up at night, what he's praying to see in his lifetime, and much more. He is one of the most well-known pastors in America, but how much do most people really know about Bishop T.D. Jakes? He recently sat down with John Jessup and opened up about his fears, frustrations, and his hope for the future.
Do you have a minute and a half? And if whatever comes to mind.
I'm not good at this, but okay.
First thing you thought of when you woke up this morning?
What I had to do.
What keeps you up at night?
Legacy.
What excites you most?
New opportunities.
What frustrates you most?
Lazy people.
I can relate. When was the last time you were afraid? I think you already answered that during the
interview. I did. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a go-to praise and worship chorus or hymn song that you always sing continually?
Oh my goodness. Everything I know is so old that when I start singing, the praise team goes into horror because they're young and they don't remember any of the old songs. But I could rock you with a lot of old hymns that we did back in the day.
Because you used to lead choir, right?
Yes.
Okay. Favorite verse of the Bible?
Psalms 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation.
Something you're praying to see in your lifetime?
My children all find their place in the kingdom, and I'm seeing a lot of that happen. More peace and understanding and love in the world. I hate that we're not more loving and more gentle in how we present Christ to people. That sometimes people think that the more rude they are, the more spiritual they are, that we have social media vigilantes who are out there killing other Christians in the name of the Lord in a way that does not represent Christ. Those things really trouble me.
Bishop Chicks, again, thank you so much for your time.
And there is more to that. Be sure to tune in to the 700 Club on October 27th. There you'll see an in-depth interview with Bishop T.D. Jakes on his take on current hot button issues, as well as his new book, Destiny. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Time to bring a little motivation to your Monday, and here's something worth considering. You are planted where you are to produce and to progress, but the process isn't always easy. So hang in there. You're in the right place at the right time, but it will take time for that to be fully realized. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about always at cbnnews.com. We'd love to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. Also, we hope you'll join us again right here next time. Once again, make this a marvelous Monday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.